Good afternoon, and welcome to the SitRep for today. It is the 24th of January, 2023, and there's a lot going on in the world. So for those who haven't joined the SitRep before, this is where we go through some news stories that I've found interesting from the past couple of days. There will be quite a few today, and they'll be in no particular order at all. So we're just going to pick through them, have a look at them, and then have a think about how we can better prepare ourselves. That's really what this is all about, is about us becoming more prepared individuals. So if you're into that, if that's your shtick, that's good, because it's mine as well. I like that. I like looking forward into the future and trying to plan for the things that we can plan for. So when the things that we cannot plan for happen, we are the most prepared we can be. That's the theory, at least. Yes, it is the afternoon. Usually I do it in the morning, sometimes at night, but today it's an afternoon edition. Welcome. Thank you for joining me. I really appreciate it. Good morning to you, Alpha, on the YouTubes. So thanks for joining me, whether you're on the YouTube, on the Instagram, or listening to this later on the audio version on your podcast machine, your podcastering machine, whatever that particular brand is. I don't really care. Good morning. Good afternoon to you as well, Advisor 2023. I don't know if that's how you say it. I ask you this every time, but it always reminds me of 90210. Advisor 90210. Do 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 do. 90s? Anyone? No? Anyway, let's jump into it today without any further ado. Like I said, the yes, Sean, how you going? Welcome. So like I was saying, there's a whole heap of stories here, and I'll try and find where the ones are, but they're all over the shop today. So please excuse me if I'm like blasting things out that don't make any sense next to each other. At the end of it, it'll all make sense, I hope. Shelley208, welcome on YouTube. Thanks for joining me. First one. There is a few stories that are happening around Ukraine at the moment. So there's more in the geopolitical space about what's happening there. It's important that we look at this because this has the potential to kick into a larger conflict, World War III-esque type thing. It is certainly heading that way. It is certainly heading towards increased tension, increased fighting, increased warlike activity, and increased involvement from other nations within Ukraine at the moment. And why do I think that? Because I can't see any other way that it's heading at the moment. All NATO nations, that is wrong. Not all NATO nations, but many of the major NATO nations now are starting to really ramp up what they're putting in. And I know that sounds crazy because we've been watching them pour billions and billions of dollars into this war effort. But thus far, we haven't seen some key things go in there from a lot of these larger countries. We haven't seen a big agreement to say, yes, we're going to put fighter jets in there. That's a big deal. We haven't seen a big agreement to say, yes, we're going to put main battle tanks on the field in there. Now we are starting to see this. So this one coming out, this one was sent to me by my main source, so shout out to them on Instagram. Thank you very much, as always. Netherlands is looking at putting F-16s on the ground, F-16 fighter jets to Ukraine if the Kiev government asks for it. Now, that was probably the key phrase to this, in this whole thing to me, was they're not like, yep, okay, we've talked about it, we've considered it, we've been in dialogue with Ukraine, we will, be looking at this as an option. They just said, hey, we've got F-16s, they're yours if you ask for them, Ukraine. It's kind of like jumping the gun. They're like, hey, you guys, if you need this, we can give it to you. And what it kind of shows me is how much warmongering is actually going on within these Western nations at the moment, where everything you see in the mainstream media, they're saying we're trying to end the war, we're trying to let Ukraine win and be the sovereign state, blah, blah, blah. They're doing their usual gaslighting, wrap it in a coating of whatever the woke propaganda or the nice message is right now to people's taste. But underlying that, what is their actions? They're saying, yes, we want to save them, we want to do the right thing, they're the bad guys, we're the good guys, blah, blah, blah. if you look at their actions, they're just pushing towards war. That's all there is to it. All they want to do is increase war. And at the end of the day, even though it is costing countries money, it is making countries money as well. Certain countries, a lot of money. Let me reiterate that. A certain country, a lot of money. And I'll let you guess what country that is that's making a lot of money, because that's actually going to be one of the themes of today, that I think a lot of things that I'm now starting to see, I'm actually, if I was an alien looking from the outside in, as opposed to us from the inside looking at it going like, oh, there's NATO versus Russia, I would actually be looking at this and going, there is, within this organization you call NATO, two factions that are definitely working against each other. No, not working against each other. One that is systematically trying to destroy the other faction within NATO. And I'll get to that, and I'll explain that, why I think that with a few other stories later on. Peter Rouse, thank you for joining me, says they can't even fly F-16s. This is an extremely good point. We've seen helicopters put on the table. We've seen various fighter jets put on the table, as in, hey, Ukraine, do you want these things? We've seen main battle tanks put on the table. We've seen armored personnel carriers put on the table, which is probably a bit easier. But all those first three that I mentioned and many other pieces of equipment require expertise. They require a lot of training, especially when you're thinking about F-16s, you're thinking about helicopters. That requires a lot of training. Main battle tanks still require a lot of training. Not to the order of, or not to the severity of what a helicopter does, but all these things require training. They all require support services built up around them as well. People just see this stuff on the mainstream media and they're like, oh yeah, okay. So another story that I'll talk about, Poland is looking at, they've kind of got the thumbs up to send Leopard tanks. Leopard tanks are from Germany. So Germany manufactures Leopard tanks, puts it out into NATO nations within Europe. They've been saying, hey, can we send these into Ukraine? Germany saying, nein, mein Freund, not happening. We're not going to do it. Well, looks like they've flipped on that, and they're probably going to do it. If you read that and go, oh, that's cool, they're just going to send 16 Leopard tanks over there. No, like that would be utterly useless. They can't just send 16 Leopard tanks. Oh, and here's a couple of user manuals as well. Just flick through it. It's like an IKEA guide. You'll get it. This is the go. This is the stop. You can reverse here. Load a thing in there. Goes bang. There's a huge amount of logistical support that's required for these sorts of things. So putting a Leopard tank, main battle tank, on the field in Ukraine requires a huge amount of support as well. To the point where I ask the question, and I have asked this before, is it even feasible to just give them the stuff and go, sort this out yourself, or come over here and train and then we'll send it over? Because that would take months of build up to do. What I would see more likely would happen is that they would actually send in people to do this, which means de facto NATO stepping into this war. That's like, I can't see, another way really around that doesn't extend out for months, even years, 18 months. You're talking about training up helicopter pilots or F-16 pilots. You're talking about years. So, maybe they are planning on doing that. But again, that flies in the face of all the messaging that we're getting, which we shouldn't believe anyway. As I always say, look at what they do, not what they say. So from the governments, from the Western governments, NATO-based governments, from the mainstream media, what are they saying? Oh, Russia's on their last legs. We've almost got them. They're about to capitulate. Ukraine's getting more. Ukraine's getting more. They're going to win this war. Well, if they're going, we're going to put F-16s in there, that is an admission, at the very least, that they're saying this war will be around for the next 2 years. All right, that's what's going to happen. That's kind of like 18 months, 6 months to get them up and operational and trained up. Then they've actually got to do something. So that's 2+ years that they're saying, that they're admitting that this war is going to go on. So if you're reading stuff that this war is almost over, I'm sorry, I just don't believe it. Or NATO is going to step in. That's the two options that I see right now. That's what's playing out in Ukraine at the moment. And that's why I kind of let off with this story. I think it's a big deal. We need to pay attention to that. JSNNUF on YouTube says they can't afford to hire more Merc pilots. No, not when you've got nations like China who are paying hand over fist to employ the brain power and the skill, I guess, of Australians, of Americans, of UK military forces, and this is happening. You've got places like UAE. UAE is a great example of this because this is something like personal to me, where I've had many job offers. Hey, come over to the UAE, train up our military. And firstly, I'm like, I really don't like the Middle East, so I'm not going to go and live over there. That's just not for me. But it's a lot of money. It's a lot of money that people like me are getting thrown at us to be like, hey, come in and train our people. I'm just like, I don't really want to train another force that is friendly-ish. Like that's just not what I'm up to. But other people probably, I guess, have less scruples about that, and they will do that. But I would suggest that Ukraine probably doesn't have the funds to do that. Alpha says, I'm betting they've been training behind the scenes. I wouldn't doubt that. But that kind of build-up that they're talking about, it would require a level of training, I think, that would be overt on some level. We would have seen something about it. So if they are training behind the scenes, it would be small scale, small fish type stuff. Peter Rouse says, I saw Australia are replacing their French helicopters with American helicopters, just like the submarine deal. Yeah, Australia. I didn't actually snap this story, and I probably should have, but Australia is investing a lot of money into rebuilding or modernizing is actually the word that we're using, our military at the moment. And I know some folk who are in this space who are actually doing it. And there's some interesting stuff that's going on there. But it is interesting that we're moving away from the European links that we've had previously and much more into US links. It, again, maybe tinfoil hat sort of stuff here that I'm going to put on for a second, but if I had to hazard a guess at why we're doing that, one of the main reasons I believe is interoperability between US and Australian forces. We have all right interoperability, but I think the US is actually looking forward, as in time, not with anticipation, but they're looking forward and going, okay, China, this is going to be a big thing. We're going to need spaces down in this area. Australia has already been earmarked, is already being utilized as a forward operating base for US troops. Okay, and that's been going on for many, many years. That's not conspiracy. That's not crazy talk or anything. That's just a standard agreement that we have with them. How can we increase that? How can we increase that potential quickly? Well, if they had to surge, if they had to put many more troops down here and start launching from Australia, it would be very beneficial if they had some local resources, some logistical support, which was in line with what they have. So that's what I'm seeing with the US stuff, with Australia going more US, is they're paving the way for that we can be totally interoperable with US and our militaries can work together to a higher degree. And then military can come in and go like, yep, cool. These boats are the same as our boats. These subs are the same as our subs. These helicopters are the same as our helicopters. Also, behind the scenes on this sort of stuff, in my personal experience of my time in the military, is I personally view this as Australia has a really, really bad track record of procurement when it comes to equipment of any level. All right, and I have personally experienced that, where they were building or buying or creating gear for us, like boots, the clothing, the combat stuff, the armor we used. When we first got it, it was horrific. It was so shit. And we were like, being in special forces, they said, hey, here's some new stuff, go test this. And we would just rip it apart, go like, this stuff's crap, don't do it. We'd end up usually giving them recommendations of off-the-shelf US manufactured gear, because that's the best as far as we were concerned, or as far as I'm concerned. It's some of the best stuff out there. So why reinvent the wheel? Well, there's money. There's money for people there. There are generals who are looking past their tenure within the military and going, well, where am I going to move to next? Am I going to be a head of industry somewhere? Am I going to be a CEO, or at least sitting around the big round table, oval table of a company? Probably. Well, maybe I can help pad that when I land outside of the military. And that's, I think, unfortunately, what's happened a lot in the past. And so our procurement has been pretty shit. Hopefully, it's heading in a better direction now, where the generals are less worried about padding their own pockets and more worried about actually the threat that is looming to our north within the next 10 years. Alpha, yeah, rightly put. General Miley from the US actually came out and said the exact quote. He said they're planning on it lasting years. His exact quote was, "This could be continuing on for a very, very long time." So he was reluctant to put a number on it, but two verys in front of long, that denotes that this could be an extended, dragged out conflict, which I don't think should be surprising to anyone at this point, because that's really what we're used to. How many decisive victories have we seen in the past 50 years, really, in any conflict that we've seen? Very few, the vast majority of them. And if you think about this, like Afghanistan, great example, 15 years, plus 5, really on either side, when you start to add in things like training teams and build-ups and reconnaissance missions and all that sort of stuff. So you're looking at a very protracted conflict there. Vietnam War, same sort of thing, very protracted conflicts. That's the flavor. That's what we're in now. That's the world that we're in. Peter Rouse says they only need the ghost of Kiev with one F-16. Very true. If only that was a real thing, instead of some propaganda manufactured bullshit. Peter Rouse says some New Zealand civilians have better gear than the New Zealand military. Yeah, easily. It should be no surprise to anyone that I like spending money on gear, especially, not so much nowadays. It's becoming less and less frequent, but I have been working in that space of security. So some of the gear that I use is, my life depends on it. So I don't like to budget on those sorts of things. I'll gladly go out and spend the money on it, and then after I shoot a video on spending the money on it, get X amount of comments from people on YouTube going, "Whoa, would you spend that amount of money?" Because I'm actually using it. That's why. But yeah, it's an unfortunate thing that many of the world's militaries kind of get this lowest common denominator gear. One of those false ideas, I think, within people that the military has cutting edge gear, and it's not really that true. Some of the stuff, some of the armies, some parts of the armies do. A lot of it does not. All right, let me continue on. What was that? No, I don't want to talk about that. That's palaver. The riots in France have finally hit. I talked about this when they said they were going to do it. Macron has come out and said that they're reforming their pension age, essentially. They're pushing it from, I think it was 62 to 64, so increasing it 2 years. I said, watch for riots, which is no shock. It's no revelation. We all know that the Parisians, French people as a whole, but Parisians in particular, love to riot. And that's what's happening now. They're apparently going off in the streets. I actually haven't seen that much on the news about it, oddly enough. I think maybe people are getting saturation from French riots. It's happening all the time. But another thing, and just that little reminder that things like this, one of the reasons why I look at what's happening in the news is because I'm looking at this sort of stuff. I'm going, okay, could that lead to, let's say, a riot? If I happen to be in Paris at the time, yes, there's a high likelihood that could lead into rioting. So then I want to best protect myself, and that's what I'm thinking about. If I have to operate in and around a city right now in a place like this, there would be certain preps that I would be definitely taking with me, i.e. things like gas masks or things that I could handle right control agents like gas and stuff like that. If I was moving through that, and having a good exit plan as well would be a great idea. All right. This one I found super interesting. Shoplifting of groceries, especially those deemed to have price increases due to greedflation. I hadn't seen that term before. Apparently it's been out there, but greedflation, which is inflation, I'm guessing here, inflation due to those greedy corporations. If only a government could come in and control all the corporations, and we could like take from those greedy capitalists and redistribute that wealth and send it back to the workers who are actually building the value of those companies. Wouldn't that be great? That'd be so, yes. No, it would not be great. And just ask China in 1960 or Russia at almost any point in its history, apart from maybe the 80s, 70s and 80s, why it's not a good idea. But anyway, it is also true that it is happening, that some corporations are taking the opportunity that is there and increasing their profit margins. And that is unfortunately one of the shit things about the world that we've built at the moment, is that we build our financial sector, our companies, around profit, around making money, around nothing else but that. There's no mitigation on that. So that then leads into this sort of stuff. Anyway, this greedflation, one of the issues that frustrates me in the world at the moment, I kind of look at what's happening, and within our societies, the separation that's actually occurring, the tribalism that's occurring, and I think, what is it? What can I see something that actually separates these people? Why do these people get so upset about somebody else not having some sort of medical intervention? Why do these people get so upset about somebody not using the right pronouns? Like, what is it about them? The only answer I can actually come up with, and I've talked about this before, is the honoring of the victimization. So something snuck into our society where we went, okay, those who are victimized need to be held up and shown to everyone as the paragon of what a good human being is, because they were victimized, which I think is insane. I think we should look after people who are victimized, but we should not hold them up for the fact that they were victimized. It's not the victimization that should be the thing that separates people, that holds someone up. Because when we did that, what we then did is pedestalize victims, which means that everyone looks at that and they go, I want to be a victim. How can I be a victim? I'm a victim because I am this color, or I am this gender that I've made up, or I'm this whatever, and you have victimized me. When we do that, we take those above us, who we deem above us, who in reality may or may not be. Like, I certainly don't think I'm above anyone else on the world, and we drag them down, which is kind of the antithesis to my philosophy in life, is that we should have paragons of virtue, of greatness, that we don't look at and want to drag down, but that we look at and we move towards. That's my theory anyway. This is an example of that. Shoplifting of groceries, because that corporation we deemed was unfair. They're doing unfair things. I'm going to level the playing field. I'm going to drag them down. The crazy part about this, the absolute crazy part about it, is that if I went and stole a packet of twisties, all right, I went and stole a packet of twisties. All right, hang on. No one outside of Australia knows what twisties are. I went and stole a packet of Doritos, right? Chips, corn chips. And I decided that Doritos company, who is it? Lay's, Pepsi, something like that. They're making more profit now. They're ripping off the people. They're doing bad things. So I'm going to punish them by stealing the chips out of the store. Pepsi doesn't care, or Lay's, or whoever the fuck it is, that huge corporation. They don't care because they've already sold it. Who cares is the independent grocer in my town. They get punished they get punished because I see unfairness there. So that's why it doesn't make sense. This absolutely doesn't make any sense to me, why people would be doing this. But apparently, it is increasing. It is going through the roof at the moment. This report, I think, was actually from Canada, if I'm correct. Canadian grocery store chains. What's another part of this story that really struck me was that people are getting online and saying and bragging about it, saying, "Hey, I just stole this and this and this," which is again virtue signaling. Like, look how good I am. You couldn't just do something good and just sit there at home smugly going, "I did something good." No, you got to go freaking tell everyone about it. So that's going to exacerbate the problem because that's going to encourage other people to do it as well. On the other side of it, this is really bad OPSEC. If you're an individual who was going to go steal some things, heads up, fool. Don't go tell the world. Don't go put it on social media. Don't go say, I am guilty. Look what I did. I just broke a law. Like, it's just the stupidity is so thickness. This is only the first 3 sentences of this this report that I'm reading on it too. The stupidity was so thick that I barely even got halfway through this, and I was just like, I can't read any more of this. It is actually hurting my brain. So that's some craziness that's going on in the world at the moment. The other part of this, though, is one thing that I want to a serious point that I want to point out here. The increase in cost of living, I keep talking about this, is going to increase crime. When people cannot eat, they will start to be more desperate and they will start to do things like this. So this is something where we can actually proactively prepare ourselves for, that we don't need to be that person. We can be the kind of people who actually have stores of food within our own house that we can look after ourselves. And if you have been buying food and storing it over a long period of time, it's depending on the period of time and depending on the up and down cycle, you even out how much you're paying for food. So if I bought a can of beans for 15 cents 3 years ago, that's probably a bit old, 2 years ago, and it's still in date, and it increased to 30 cents, well, I've continued buying those cans. So the 30-cent can now goes at the back of my can pile. The 15-cent can is what I'm eating today, which means I'm eating food cheaper than I can buy it out there. And maybe I can even pump the brakes, not buy as much right now, buy more when it's cheaper, buy less when it's more expensive. And then when price comes back down, inflation cannot last forever. It can last a long time, but it cannot last forever. At some point, you would imagine it would come back down. And at that point, you buy more. So this is one way we can, as preppers, protect ourselves. That crazy person who's storing cans of food, the dangerous right-wing extremist who's storing cans of food. There's nothing crazy about it. It just makes sense. It actually makes financial sense. You do the same in a bank. You do the same with money. You do the same with any other resource that you had. But when you do it with food, all of a sudden, you're freaking loopy. You're a madman. How dare you? Peter Rouse says canned food good for 30 years when stored properly. Yes, I agree with that totally. Make sure the cans aren't dented. Make sure they're in a relatively controlled temperature environment. Keep them away from water. Cans don't really get affected by sunlight that much, but sunlight can increase the heat, so that's a bit of a problem. But that's what I do. Mine's a cool, dark storage area that I use, so that goes with everything. Ratepayers frustrated over City of West Torrens rule on dog ownership for small properties. They're stopping people from owning dogs. This is in Adelaide, coming out of Adelaide. This sort of thing I'm always shocked about. I don't, they're attacking the animals. They're coming after the animals. This has been covert for a while, and it's starting to become very, very overt. You will not have any animals. Animals destroy the environment. You know that. Those things that have existed for long before human beings existed, that we came up out of, those things that have been all over the earth for millions of years. Well, now, in the last 30 years, they're destroying the environment. Yep. So cows, no good. Chickens, no good. Dogs, can't have your own dog. Can't do this. Yeah, I don't like this. This is houses that were governed by HOAs, homeowner alliances, getting very restrictive. The point of this is, I guess the main point, it caught my eye. It was sent to me by my main source, but it particularly caught my eye because it's dogs, and everyone should know that I love dogs. The other part of it is that these are people who own a home. This isn't renting. That shits me enough. If you can't have a dog when you're renting, that shits me enough. But you own your own home. You do not have autonomy over that piece of property. It's ridiculous. I'm actually like mired in this at the moment with all these kind of heritage rules with where I live, and it is absolutely ridiculous. All right, let's jump over to the US now. Iowa, a place I've never been, a place I don't know if I'll ever go, to be honest. I don't know if there's anything happening in Iowa that would ever drag me there, but who knows? What does Iowa make? Probably more than anything else. Apparently, pork products, pigs. They do a lot of pig products here. Now, there is this scheme called the SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. It's a bit of money. It goes out to people so they can buy food. Makes sense. People struggling, what do they need? Food, right? It's like you hear this on TV shows and stuff. They say food stamps. I've never like really wrapped my head around it. We don't have food stamps or any sort of system. Well, we have kind of equivalents in Australia, but not to the level that they had it in the US. This is a similar sort of program. You're given money or money to go buy food. So you can go buy whatever food you want with this money, but you can't buy cigarettes with it. You can't buy drugs with it. You can't buy alcohol with it. You can buy food. Okay? Makes sense, right? If somebody is struggling with their money and they keep spending it in the wrong places, you go, well, here's some stuff just for food. Problem being is that they are proposing a bill, or have they passed it? I think they've just proposed it. Introduced earlier this month in Iowa legislature, the country's top red meat producing state would ban people on the SNAP from buying meat and a lot of other typical grocery foods as well. So, all those people who have been saying, if we go to a CBDC, they can track what you actually buy. They can look at what you buy. That's obvious. All the people who then took that to the next step and said, well, a CBDC is technically programmable, so they can control what you buy. They can tell you, no, you cannot buy that with these dollars. And that's where people go, whoa, no, they would never do that. They're doing it. They're doing it already. Here's your handout, but you can't buy any red meat with it. But we make red meat here. That's what Iowa does. Yeah, but you can't have any. Also, you can't have any butter, and you can't have any animal product at all. In fact, we want you having margarine. We want you on the seed oils, and you can get Doritos. All right, that's important. You can get the Doritos, but you can't get a steak. No. You want some spare pork ribs? No. They're naughty. But you want a triple chocolate custard donut? Done. Can do. Insanity. But this is the world where we're going to. So this is again another warning call that I'm putting out there. Yo, sort your own food supply out. Grow your own food. Store your own food now while it's abundantly there on the shelves, and you can go and pay cash for it. You can even just pay, tap your card or your phone for it if you want, but it's there. No one's tracking you doing that, really. No one's stopping you from doing that. So go and store it up now. Start gardening. Start taking control of your own food system. Start encouraging others in your local area to do it as well. Start to build those systems within your own community. And as Peter Rouse just said here, they can't track what you hunt. I'll put a caveat on that, Peter. They do try and do that in Australia. So if I have a restricted license, an R license within Australia, which then gives me permission to hunt on state forest land, I have to register that I'm going to hunt there so that they know that I'm there, because there's a limit of how many people can go there. So that makes sense. I then have to register what technically I should register what I saw. Very few people do that. But if I do kill something, I have to register it with them. But if I am out hunting on private property, that does not apply. I can shoot what I want. Well, I can't shoot what I want, but I can shoot, things that I'm allowed to shoot, and then eat those things without anyone ever knowing. Renee C says Australia Centrelink has the basics card and income management that restricts what you can spend your money on, 50% up depending on the assessment. JSNNUF just said, we just implemented a mandatory reporting system for deer harvesting this year in Michigan. Yep. It is my understanding where I was in upstate New York, and I was talking to a hunter there, and they said that it can be relatively restrictive there, as in there's a ticket system, only X amount of people get access to certain areas per year, and that you do have to jot it down. So I know certain parts in the US it is a bit more restrictive. I think other parts of the US it's less restrictive. I was talking to a hunting friend in Colorado who I think said that they hunted and didn't, they just filled up their freezer and that was it. But yeah, this is the world that we're going to. But at the end of the day, all I'm saying here is I encourage you to sort your own food system out, take control of your own food system as much as possible. Janufi, g'day, welcome. Says, hey Stu, sorry just got here. Not sure if you've talked about this, but I've got neighbors that said their chickens aren't laying anymore. They've put it to the feed. I also follow a few American homesteaders that have said the same. Tainted feed, ? That's a good one. I haven't actually heard anything about this except for anecdotally, where one of my friends just over the road had two chooks and one rooster. I think the hen stopped laying and the rooster fucked off. Just left. No, I went to another roost over the road, someone else's roost, and started in there. Apart from that, though, no, I haven't heard anything. One of my good friends that you may know, that InstaChick, gifted me 12 eggs the other day, fresh laid eggs. So there are still hens out laying. But if you have a story, if anyone out there has a story about this, about hens not laying at the moment, please send it through to me. I want to know this. Let's create another data point here. This would be the sort of thing that may not be getting out to the news necessarily, which is why I might not be that aware of it, to be honest. But I would love to know more. So if anyone else has any other stories, thank you very much for that, Janufi. I really appreciate that. That is great. Kerry says, happens in winter, has to do with daylight hours. Interesting. We're in summer though. Got a lot of daylight hours. Peter Rouse says, another reason to get off reliance on the government. Correct. Depends on the breed of chicken. Another thing, make sure they get enough calcium. That's a big one. Enough calcium. Shelley208 says, hens will stop laying in the winter. They should start up again unless they're old. Old ones will be food insect control for the garden. Yeah, like I said, we're in the height of summer now, so should still be laying. Anyway, let me know. What's this one about? No, that's the same one that I was just talking about. German. All right, I did reference this one at the start when I was talking about Ukraine, and I said if I was looking from the outside in on the Ukraine conflict and what's going on and the forces that are against each other, which we're all thinking, okay, yes, this is NATO versus Russia. One thing I would ask myself is, I would ask, why is the US trying to destroy Germany? And as a flow-on effect, Europe. Why are they doing that? Who took out Nord Stream? We are almost 100% sure now that it wasn't, and I say we as in mainstream media has actually admitted this, because we, those of us with eyes in our head and brains that actually work, from the instant that it happened, went, this is not Putin. Why would he do that? That makes zero sense. We know Russia didn't blow up Nord Stream. So who did? Who benefited the most from it? All that gas that was going from Russia into Germany no longer goes there. Where do they get their gas? Oh, it's getting shipped over from the US. That's very nice of them, wasn't it? Oh, they're making a tidy profit off it as well. Okay. Well, they are sending it over there. So good for them. US benefited from that. All right. Who else benefits from countries upgrading their military equipment? The US does, because they have been hard at work tying contracts down to many countries, including Australia, as I was talking about, for new, shiny military equipment. Who loses if countries, especially within Europe, start sending their older equipment over to Ukraine and don't replace it with the same stuff? Germany. Those Leopard tanks, made in Germany, sent out to other countries. Those countries are saying, hey, we're going to send all these Leopard tanks over to Ukraine, and then we're going to buy Abrams from the US. And Germany goes, I'd like to counter offer that with a Leopard tank, but I can't. Why can't they? Because gas price is so high that factories cannot build military equipment right now. Oh my God. If that was a planned act by the US or by someone within the US, I would just, that is masterful. That is James Bond villain level 10. Utterly stunning. The perfection at which the entire thing was executed is utterly stunning. If you were a country where your dollar is the world reserve currency, like the US dollar is, and you could see it slipping, and you looked around and saw what other places could it be replaced in, one of my eyes would fall squarely on Europe and the euro, and I would go, I don't want that so powerful right now. How can I stop that being powerful? Anyway, that's my tinfoil conspiracy theory for the day. Germany under attack by the US, so-called ally. Staying in this area now, this was an interesting one. Sweden breaks 200 years of neutrality to support Ukraine. So they are jumping in left foot and right foot at the same time into this war. They're not stopping. They're continuing to push through the fact that Turkey has currently vetoed their access into NATO. They're sending equipment over to Ukraine. They are going full on into it. And this is different, like I said, to 2 centuries of policy from Sweden. Things are changing. Our world is rapidly changing right in front of our eyes. Let me just catch up with some stuff here. Peter Rouse says, yes, put winter lights in the coop and insulate the laying boxes. He also says they have always, I'm assuming you meant gone, yet they have always gone after Germany, dates back to even before World War I. There you go, you correct yourself, gone after. Should have kept reading. Norman Lacey says he has shut down several in the US to drive prices up. Shut down several, what was it? Anyway, I don't know what I was talking about now. A lot of military gear coming out of US these days are junk. Is junk? Are junk. What's the correct grammar there? Is junk, I think. But anyway, I'm not here to correct people's grammar. All right, I'm here to throw stories up and for us to all look at it and go like, here's some interesting data that we're looking at in the world. A lot of gear coming out, a lot of all types of gear, not just military gear, a lot of stuff being manufactured nowadays everywhere in the world is junk. We are deindustrializing. We are deglobalizing. We are de-societalizing. I don't know if that's a word. I'm going to make it a word right now. We're sliding backwards. And before everyone freaks out and gets really fearful, that's actually a normal part of the cycle. When we look at, let's take the perspective of empires, all right? And let's say, Roman Empire as an example. We had peak Roman Empire and then it declined and they made worse and worse things. Then there was the collapse of the Roman Empire. Then for many years, parts of the Roman Empire that then sort of broke away and were on their own couldn't do what the Romans did for hundreds of years. They were operating with technologies that were worse than 600 years before they came along. Same with certain areas of the British Empire. After the British Empire disassembled itself in I would say actually one of the most orderly collapses of a empire ever that we know of, then parts of those areas that the English Empire or the UK had pumped up and created then went into disarray, went into disrepair. So we can see these sorts of things happening in real time. And now, Pax Romania, Pax Britannia, Pax Americana. We're at the end of the Pax Americana days, the end of the American Empire, potentially, but we are seeing a slide. We're seeing many, many signals that are telling us that we're on the decline at the moment. So yeah, gear all around the world, everything is getting worse and worse on the whole. I'm not saying everything, but there are many things that I lament where I'm like, I look at my new vehicle and I go, this is great. I really like a new vehicle, but I can see problems, happening in 5 to 6 years. And then I look at my friend who's got a 1984 Toyota Land Cruiser. It still has problems. All right, I'm not saying it's perfect, but it's still here. It's still kicking around. Almost 40 years later. Anyway. Australia. Here's an Australian story. Lack of timber supply forces Australia's only white paper manufacturer to shut down. Copy paper will be at least 50% more expensive in the short term and broader than that. We're concerned that supply is going to get very, very tricky to even get copy paper in the medium term. So it's a bit of a warning to Aussies out there. Paper about to increase in price, amongst many other things. But this adds into many of the things that we've been looking at within Australia and New Zealand, where we're seeing the shutdown of these industries, and it's should be becoming very painfully apparent to everyone right now that the systems that we assume are in place are not. Paper manufacturing. Yeah, of course, we do that here in Australia, don't we? No, not anymore. Another example that I'll jump into in a sec, CO2 within New Zealand, oil refinery within Australia and New Zealand. All these things, fertilizer manufacturing. Okay, we assume that we have these things in plentiful supply and that they can always come in. But we have been progressively offshoring all these amenities, all these very fundamental and key parts of our society to the point that we have atrophied our own ability to produce these things. And now they're gone. And in this deglobalizing world, we see when supply chains hiccup or totally fuck up, we don't get it. We don't get these things anymore. You just live without them now. Peter S says, stock up on printer paper. Do it now. How much printing do you do anyway? Really? I do a little bit here and there for lists and, work, but very little. Very, very little. Truth, it says, what is your diet like? I don't know how to answer that. Meat. I love meat and I love fat. Those are the two things that excite me most about eating, meat and fat. I eat a lot of veggies. I love veggies. I don't eat a lot of fruit. I eat like a bit here and there, but like it just doesn't really do it for me. Yeah, all right. As locally sourced usually as possible, but you know, I mean, I eat bread and things like that, but I'm also gluten intolerant, so yeah, kind of can live without that stuff. It's not really that big of a deal. That's my diet anyway. Everyone's diet's different and should be. All right. What else we got? I'm going to skip over that. Australia has announced that it will accelerate plans to purchase advanced sea mines to protect its maritime routes and ports from potential aggressors, as China plans to increase its influence in the Pacific region. What are we spending on it? $698 million worth of smart sea mines. Smart sea mines. What are they? Dolphins. No, I don't know. Par for the course right now. Shouldn't be surprised by any of this. Australia pumping money into the military, worried about China. We're heading for it. Like I said, I went to a black tie dinner to do with my unit a few months ago, and we had somebody very high up who is very connected. I'm not going to say names or anything like that, who came in and said, quote, Australia is currently at 1938. And what he was saying with that, 1938, obviously the year before World War II. World War II starting in 1939. Not when Pearl Harbor got attacked. Actually started in 1939. So essentially what he's saying is that right now, which is 2022 at the time, we're the year before. We've got maybe a year before we are embroiled into a larger war. So it doesn't surprise me at all that Australia is doing Japan, really. That's what we're doing, just less good. Less fast, I'll say that. Maybe we had a better standing at the start. So we started from here, they started from down here, and their acceleration's like this. At some point, they'll probably overtake us. Peter House says, sounds like my diet. No alcohol, though, either. Meat and veggies. No, I do have alcohol. Mainly whiskey. Occasionally a nice dark stout. Be wary of anything labeled smart, says SpiceGal27. I agree with you on that. All right, this is the big story. I've been trying to get to this one. Nearly 220 million people in Pakistan are left in the dark following a country-wide power outage. Super interesting story coming out here. You know, I always like to throw up these power outages. And what we're seeing is power outages for large amounts of people, usually short term. Couple of issues with this one. Okay, for the first thing, I read through this story. I can see nothing where they said it was because of this. They said aging infrastructure. They said breakdowns. There was system-wide breakdowns. There are many grids that connect the grid, and apparently they all went down, which I find kind of suspect. But I can also see that if you're not investing in your infrastructure, as many countries have not been, we've just been like band-aiding our old infrastructure for decades now, that something like this could happen. And if you think we're immune to this in Australia, then like I would like to disabuse you of that notion. America as well. Aged system. New Zealand. Obviously aged system. You guys are 20 years behind Australia. So aged system. I'm just joking. I'm just joking. You're 20 years behind Australia in the best kind of way. Everyone's still kind of nice and can talk to people. But you know, these grids that we have are fragile, and we need to realize that. If you have a blackout, I always say this, you have a blackout, you can expect in 4 hours it'll come back on. And you can expect that it'll just be your area that's blacked out. 220 million people without power. Imagine the effect that would have. I mean, there's only 28 million people in Australia. Imagine all of them were without power now. And I'm not talking about for 4 hours. I'm talking about for 4 days. Imagine the chaos that would ensue. It would be insane. There are things, I've got some conspiracy theories about this particular story, and I'm just totally not going to go into it. I want to see where this actually develops and where it goes. But just as a warning to everyone, remember, power supply should be part of your preps as well. Already talked about that. Greece is extending or expanding its border wall. It has a border wall, much like Trump's wall that he built. There's already a wall there, but built more of, against Turkey. Don't like those Turkey immigrants, they said. Not having it. For those who don't know, this is your little reminder that Greece and Turkey are at each other's throats. This is yet another flashpoint in the world that you might want to have your eyes on. Ukraine is not the only thing that's going on. There are many, many conflicts that are happening around the world, or potential conflicts that are about to kick off, and this is one of them. Russian lawmaker warns of global catastrophe if West gives Ukraine heavy arms, which they are. Another warning, another veiled-ish warning from Russia saying that if you guys continue to increase this, we will use nuclear weapons. They never said that. It's all veiled. Global catastrophe. What else could they mean, honestly? I'll just quickly whip through. Oh, this one blew my mind. Brazil, Argentina are going to start preparations for common currency. They're going to create a currency. Could be called, they're spitballing some ideas, the SUR, S-U-R, which is what language? Latin, I guess, for South, being South America. And once they start to form this up, they're going to ask other countries to come in. So this could lead to an EU type situation in South America. Interesting stuff. Again, this is an EU type situation in South America. Interesting stuff. Again, this is another sign that of a multipolar world that we're moving into, of the breakdown of the US petrodollar homogeny. It is going down. We're going to see more systems like this pop up, I think. Or I wouldn't be surprised if we saw more systems like this, but this is another big one. Coming out of South America. Oh man, how's Chris Hipkins? Peter, tell me about Chris Hipkins for a second. Who's this guy? He said some whack shit. Like, I watched the video of it and I was like, is this a Babylon B parody? Is this a piss take? What's going on here? Chris Hipkins, the new PM of New Zealand, has come up and said we need to chase the people who didn't take the COVID vaccine. Quote, I think early next year we'll be in the phase of chasing up people who haven't come forward to get their vaccination or have missed their bookings. I want every New Zealander to come forward, but human behavior suggests that there will be some people that we have to actually really go out and look for. I can't say that we're going to have some hesitant people, that we're not going to have some hesitant people, or some people who just haven't come forward that we don't have to go out and find next year. In other words, we're coming to hunt you down. It's terrifying. Oh, like I said, I watched this video. I'm like, what am I watching? What am I watching here? This is insane. The dude looks like some sort of weird man-child. Anyway, I'm sorry, New Zealand. If you're somebody who decided to not get a certain medical intervention over the past 3 years in New Zealand, all I can say is I'm sorry. And I have a place for you here in Australia if you need to get away. Not that things are great here, but as of yet, the government hasn't started hunting people down. Let's talk about some good news around this whole palaver. Japan to lower COVID-19 to flu status in spring. This I like. Japan Prime Minister on Friday announced plans to downgrade the legal status of COVID-19 to the equivalent of a seasonal influenza in spring. Looks like the Japan Prime Minister has come down with a sudden case of common fucking sense to me. Like, that's the best news, or not the best news, but that's like it brings a little bit of joy to my heart. What else we got? I'm going backwards in time here. I just realized with my stories, they're going backward. I'm not going to talk about that. I might have talked about some of this stuff. Oh, no, this is the big last one that I was going to talk, because I did mention this. New Zealand breweries see CO2 rationing as shortage hits. Warning, my Kiwi friends, my Kiwi cuzzy bros. Your beer is not going to be fizzy anymore. Get beer now. Get it into you. No, there's some sort of CO2 shortage, which I think, as I was saying, was to do with, here it is. This was actually sent to me by one of my main sources. I didn't realize that NZ has only one manufacturer and the facility is old. So this is to do with the CO2 shortage. Quote, an ammonia leak in a pressure safety valve forced Todd Energy to close the country's only liquid carbon dioxide production plant last month. The private company has revealed following an internal investigation. Just before Christmas, our normal operating surveillance detected a risk relating to the release of ammonia from a pressure safety valve at our CO2 plant. At the time, all plant safety and evacuation systems were activated with no harm caused to people or the environment. The only harm came to beer. So your Spates, no more. Your Steinlagers, no. Is that even made in New Zealand anymore? I don't know. Seems like it might be made offshore, but I don't know. Anyway, flow-on effects. It's a bit tongue-in-cheek. I'm talking about beer here, but I like beer every now and then. Quite beer. This sort of thing is what I'm talking about. That the ability to manufacture these kind of aggregates, constituent products within our own countries has decreased to the point, or atrophies to the point, that we know when it fails, we just don't have it. And it's too hard to get in, or too costly to get in. And it's a bit of an issue, because a lot of the things that we get today have many, many inputs in them. In fact, everything we get today has many, many inputs put into it. So this is sort of stuff that really you should look at and go like, okay, yes, I see the interconnected web of systems, and how when you pull this one or this one fails, it affects all this. Maybe I don't want to be beholden and reliant totally on it. Maybe I want to actually take control of some of these things myself, or at least have a backup that I can utilize myself. Maybe even make my own beer. Anyway, that's it for today, gang. I've been going on for over an hour, so I'm going to cut it there. As always, thank you very much for joining me. Thanks for the lively chat that's been going on today. There's been a lot of input from everyone. I really, really appreciate it. I appreciate you. So thanks for coming along and listening. As always, if you've got any questions, any things that you find interesting, please feel free to shoot them through to me. I'd love to see it. Hang on a minute. Michael Gunner wanted to hunt down Northern Territory unvaxxed. Yeah, I did see something about that. Spice Girl 27 said. It has happened in Australia. But the thing that struck me was that it's happening now. So you've got Japan saying, hey, look, COVID-19 is just a flu now. Don't even worry about it. You've got the US saying, actually, we're not going to let anyone who's not vaccinated into our country. You've got New Zealand saying, hey, we're going to hunt down unvaccinated people. So you've got some very different messages that are going on around the world right now. Peter Rouse says, drink water, not beer. Joke's on you, my friend. There's water in beer. All right, until next time, gang, thank you very much. Stay safe out there. Keep prepping. Get into the garden if you can, as I always say. And apart from that, Semper Paratus.